January meeting of the Board of License Commissioners of Carroll County, Maryland to order. It has been tradition, as you all know, that we start our meetings with the pledge of the flag and observe a moment of silence in favor of those who have made our country free. It is strictly voluntary. At this time, I would ask Commissioner Barnhart if he would lead the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Justice for all. Thank you very much. This time, it's my pleasure to welcome Commissioner Mulvaney. I think this is her first official meeting. We are glad to have you, young lady. So instead of me kidding you about lunch and so on and so forth, welcome. This time I would ask our attorney, Mr. Dixon, if he would call our first case, 10 a.m. case 6273, please.
All right, case 6273, a Class A beer, wine, and liquor license issued to Yogesh Bajaj for the use of Full Masti Inc., trading as Winfield Wine and Spirits, 1707 West Liberty Road, Westminster, Maryland, 21157, violation hearing, sale to a minor. In the file of this matter, we have the following documents. A delivery of notice of hearing for this case, acknowledgement of receipt of letter dated October 8th, 2020, delivered by hand on October 8th, 2020. This is October 8th, 2020 letter from Joe Vance to Yogesh Bajaj. There is a alcohol compliance violation sheet dated October 7th, 2020, and completed and signed by Charles K. There is a notice of violation for selling alcohol to persons under 21 with the letterhead of Brian L. D. Leonardo, State's Attorney. The person that signed it is Kevin Lindsay. And there is a Maryland vertical driver's license of a volunteer. License indicates the person will be under 21 until 7/31/2021. Then there's a photograph of the person outside the store with a 6-pack of Corona Premier. I would ask that the file be entered into evidence.
We'll accept that into evidence. This time I'd ask all those who intend to testify in this case, please stand, raise your right hand, and be sworn in by Ms. Vance.
Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes. I do, yes.
Thank you very much. At this time, Inspector Charles, are you going to present the case?
Yes, sir.
You may proceed, please.
Thank you. Good morning. Be the Liquor Board Inspector Charles Carey. On 7 October 2020 at 15:15 hours, I had an underage volunteer who is 20 years old enter Winfield Wines and Spirits to purchase an alcoholic beverage. He went to the cold box and obtained a 6-pack of Corona Premier. He took same to the front counter to pay. The volunteer was not asked for any form of ID and was sold the alcohol. The clerk was Kevin Allen Lindsay, who is also TIPS certified. I spoke with the clerk, Mr. Lindsay, who advised that the volunteer looked over 35 years old, and he did not ask for any ID. All paper was completed and signed. Also, I request that both photos in the case be entered into evidence. That's our case.
We'll accept that into evidence. At this time, who is representing Mr. Baja? You are with us. Would you like to tell us what you would like to say? I believe you're muted.
No, we have the speakerphone on.
You're muted again.
Can you hear us now?
We can hear you now.
Okay,
Before
great.
you proceed, state your name and address for the record, please.
Yes, sir. This is Mickey Bajaj. My home address is 9917 Post Lake Road, Ellicott City, Maryland.
Okay.
What I'd like to say is, yes, sir. We did make the mistake. It was a bad judgment call that was made on our part. Having said that, we have reviewed the TIPS certification, the steps. We are all TIPS certified. And also in Kevin's, the young man here, his defense, I'd like to say he has been very consistent over the years, checking the IDs. We have records here for the past 5 or 6, checks that we had between from you folks or the state police or the ATF or the tobacco, and consistently we have passed. So it's not that our intent was to sell to minors. It was a bad judgment call that was made. Unfortunately, I think what happened was it was and by the way, I'd like to add that just a month before also we were checked on this and we did pass at that time. But this time around, what happened was the young man who came in, I believe in a quick passing in the look, he had a slightly receding hairline and a beard, which threw us off. And going forward, we have rectified that. We have changed that. It's generally, as a segment, I would say it's only about 11% of the population that at that age would have a 20%, or that would have a receding hairline. But at the same time, regardless, it's something that we have changed. Just absolutely more careful and, asking each and every person who looks to be, who could be even borderline, anything of that sort. Having said that, the main goal here is, and I totally understand that where I'm coming from because I have 2 teenagers and I absolutely do not want them getting into anything like that where it's, it's an item that needs to be controlled and contained. And so we have absolutely no intentions of selling to the minors or that's bad business. We're not looking to do that.
Do you have a policy on vertical IDs? Do you accept vertical IDs?
Yes, sir. Until the COVID started, our standard policy was to not accept vertical IDs. However, since COVID, we have had to change it because we've had several people who have turned 21 and they've had trouble getting the new IDs or they've not made it out to the MVA. So that's unfortunately put that in a gray area. But before that, we were absolutely not even, if it's a vertical ID, we wouldn't even accept it.
When you receive a vertical ID now and the patron has a mask on, do you ask him to remove the mask to further identify that that's actually who it is on that license?
Absolutely, absolutely. We have them pull the mask down real quick so we can take a look and do a match, and then of course in our system we punch in the number. It tells us, if the date is accepted or not accepted.
And how many would you estimate during this period of time where you have changed your policy that you have accepted vertical IDs?
The vertical IDs, it's only a handful. I wouldn't say that there's a lot of that new ones, younger folks who are coming in. So, but at the same time, there are, I couldn't tell you an exact number, but it's in the very low double digits. I would say maybe 10, 12.
I would say less than 10.
Less than 10. Okay. Yeah. So it's not a huge number.
On the other hand, how many have you refused under that instance?
Before COVID, it was a very standard practice. We would refuse them. And unfortunately, actually, we got dinged for that also on social media. If you go out there and take a look from the past, you'll find where we have refused, and we've been basically, raked over the coals for doing that.
Commissioners, do you have questions of this testimony? Ms. Mulwiney?
So thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Mr. Bajaj, you say you changed your policy since your last violation. Do you mean you took out the receding hairline policy, or what was it you were referring to when you said that?
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. It was the judgment call that we made on the receding hairline. Yes, we have taken that out. Going forward, it is, it starts with, okay, are you at least 21? That kind of sort of a general conversation, because we have to be careful. These days, we do get several customers who are agitated sometimes when they come in, so we kind of have to feel it out as to what direction they're going in. But we generally started out with, okay, are you at least 21? Are you, look, it needs to be that way. You have your ID with you. First of all, if they don't have an ID with you, that right there says it. And then that kind of leads on to, okay, well, can you pull it out, please? We need to see it.
So your carding policy is you card everyone that looks under 35. Is that what your carding policy is?
Absolutely, yeah.
And do you
Unless,
think?
of course, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Now, unless, of course, if it's regular customers that we recognize, then that's a whole different thing.
So do you think the benefit of changing to accepting vertical license now outweighs the risk? So if you have a standard, we do not accept vertical license that you did before, do you think changing it for COVID, do you think that's worth the risk of a possible violation?
Well, obviously it led us to a violation. So that's why we had to relook at that. But it's just that, like I say, when you have agitated customers walking in and you're right there standing in front, it's not a comfortable situation. So that's why, and we've kind of backtracked on that. But regardless, yes, we are right now accepting a vertical ID, but not without doing matching the face and punching it into the system to make sure that the date of birth goes through. But we have no intentions of long-term. Sorry, I do want to add that we do not have any intentions long-term of continuing that. Once the COVID situation is done, we are going back to a standard policy of not accepting vertical IDs. Right now, with the folks we had, unfortunately, the reasoning that's been used is, well, MVA is not really issuing us any new ones, so I don't have anywhere to go, that kind of thing.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Yes, ma'am.
You just testified that when you have a vertical license, you look at the birth date and put it in a machine to verify. Is that what you said?
Yes, sir.
Scan the ID.
And so either we'll scan or punch it in. So both, yes, sir.
Let me ask you a question. You're familiar with vertical IDs?
Absolutely.
There are two dates on the vertical ID in the middle of the thing. What are those dates?
All the date that we're looking for is, of course, it says that, it says when they turn 18 and when they turn 21. So those are the ones that we focus on. And thankfully, now that the law is both for tobacco and for alcohol, it's 21. It makes it a lot easier in certain ways.
If the date is already highlighted on a vertical license that tells when that person is either 18 or 21, why is it necessary that you scan it to obtain whether that birth date is correct or not?
Well, the reason we scan it is to have additional help there, because at any given time we may be working with the lottery. There may be a couple of customers there. There's people walking around the store we're trying to keep an eye on. So the focus is on the customer, but at the same time, we have to be vigilant as to what's going on, and it helps having that additional aid where we can punch it in and be thinking. It's not unusual. I've caught myself in the past where I started to transpose the numbers and, oh, hold on, no. I'm thinking about this wrong. So it's better just punch it in and get it that way. But even though we know that it's there, but still, if there's any doubt, we can kind of clear that up, and it sort of helps us focus and make a decision.
I have some other questions, but I'll yield to Commissioner Barnhart this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Majaj, are you licensed for Winfield Wine and Liquors?
Yes, sir.
So your name is Yogesh?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. I'm still a little confused about the receding hairline policy that seems to have been in place that's been changed with this compliance check. Can you explain to me what the receding hairline has to do with store policy? I can understand what it has to do with how someone appears, their age, but did the store have a policy regarding receding hairline?
No, sir, not per se a written policy, but generally, if you see someone, let's say like me, it wouldn't make sense to, there's a judgment call made there that don't need to check the ID.
Okay. How many employees do you have, Mr. Bajaj?
We're a total 5, sir.
And I think you testified earlier that everyone is TIPS or TAM certified.
Absolutely, yes. Yes, sir.
Is Mr. Lindsay going to testify at this hearing?
He can. He's right here. Sure, sir.
Okay. Well, I'll wait until the commissioners have finished asking questions of the licensee. But I'll just save some further questions for Mr. Lindsay when he testifies. Thank you.
Mr. Baha, how long have you owned this establishment?
I believe it's 6 years now, sir.
Commissioner, you have any other questions of the licensee this time?
Actually, I'm sorry. I did have one question.
Go ahead.
Mr. Bajaj, you mentioned that just before this failed compliance check, that the store had passed a check. What check was that? Who made that check?
Well, it was the month before that, sir, in September, and I think it was Mr. Benfer. He came by at the time, and there was the compliance check that happened the month before, I believe.
Okay, so this violation is October 7th, 2020, and your recollection is that in September of 2020, the liquor board inspector did a compliance check, and that was a successful compliance check. Is that right?
Yes, sir. That was, hold on one second, that was September 2nd, 2020, and we passed at the time.
Did you get a letter from the liquor board indicating that you had passed that compliance check?
Yes, sir.
Again, I see Mr. Lindsay is holding something up. It looks like
yes.
the letter you're...
Yes,
okay,
sir.
And the date of that letter is what, Mr. Bajaj?
September 2nd.
Great. Okay. And who signed the letter?
It's David L. Browning.
Okay. Thank you, sir. That's all the questions I have, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions of Mr. Baja? If not, Mr. Lindsay, state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Kevin Lindsay, and my address is 221 North Main Street, York, New Salem, Pennsylvania.
And your capacity at the establishment is manager or what?
Yep. Evening manager.
Were you on duty at the time of this occurrence?
I was, sir.
And would you like to tell us your version of what happened?
The gentleman walked in. He brought a 6-pack of Corona to the counter. I made a judgment call based on his appearance and only seeing half his face that he was over 30. And that was obviously wrong and a mistake, but it was a mistake that I made. I intend to not make
So
that
you
mistake.
You thought he was over 30, though, therefore you did not ask for ID, correct?
Correct. I thought he was at youngest 30. I thought it would be closer to 35.
How long have you been employed at Winfield
For-
Wine and Spirits?
For about six plus years now.
Have you been on duty at any time when a successful compliance check was done?
Yes, Your Honor. I know for sure 1 for alcohol and at least 1 or 2 for tobacco.
5 of them for tobacco.
5 for tobacco. So
5 for tobacco. Sorry.
And you've worked there just about the whole time the licensee has owned the store, if 6 years, and he's been there about 6 years according to his testimony?
yes, I was here for a couple months with the previous owner.
Commissioners, do you have any questions of this witness?
Yes, sir. So, Mr. Lindsay, looks like you are TIPS or TAM certified at the time of this occurrence?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And what exactly about the volunteer made you think that he was over 30, perhaps 35?
The hairline and stubble. I saw some wrinkles around the eyes, I thought. And he just appeared to me to be above 30 or at least older than me. I'm 29. So.
Okay.
And since then, I have changed that judgment, and I've actually carded a lot of 40-year-olds in the process. But
Okay, at the time of this compliance check, was there a written policy about checking cards of customers, or this just a general store policy? Okay, can you enunciate that? Tell us what it is.
it's always been a policy to identify anybody that we do not know personally or under 30.
Okay, 30. All right. Is that policy changed now in light of this failed check?
We have kind of, without it written down, it has changed to 35, yes, Your Honor.
That's all the questions I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Commissioner Mulvaney?
I have no questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Inspectors Carey and Benfer, as you've heard testimony, this establishment has been owned by the same people for about 6 years. Could you give us the previous record of any violations since this ownership has had the establishment?
It's got to be 4/21/2015 is the last violation.
When's the last violation?
Let me redo that again. It's 12/14/2016, 1/5/2016, and 10/9/2014. And I have no record of being there in September. And then as of this date and time, we have not been able to recheck them. So
You, Commissioner Barnhart, do you have recollection of previous fines and violations from the record?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, when I looked at the file, I saw a violation of 3916. The fine was $300. And I saw a violation of 2817. The fine was $1,000.
That's my recollection of the file, but I don't believe those numbers that Inspector Carey just mentioned coincide with what we saw in the same file.
I think maybe the inspector was giving the hearing date as opposed to the violation date.
We keep the files by the violation date. We had a violation. We don't keep it by the hearing date. In the folder, it's kept by the hearing date.
Right. That's always a tad confusing to me. So I see 3 violations in the last 5 years. Is there any dispute about that? Anyone?
I agree with what you just said. That's my recollection of reviewing the licensee's file. March 9th, 16, a fine of $300 was assessed. February the 8th of 17, a $1,000 fine was assessed. And now we have the third violation of which we are discussing here this morning.
Sir, may I add something to that?
Yes.
Okay. The first violation was within about 2 weeks of when we bought the place, and we were still trying to kind of get our head around like all the different kind of beers and the liquors and all that, and that's what happened. The second violation was it was a new employee who had just started, and we had made the mistake at the time, and then ever since then we've been fine in the sense. Because everyone's been PAM certified and we kind of went to a standardized approach of doing things until now. So yes, it's 3 in that time frame if you think from that standpoint, but realistically it was, if you look in the context of things, it was, we had just literally taken over the place and that's when it happened. So that was one, and then the second one was with a new employee.
And Mr. Chairman, it also looks like that there was a string of 4 or 5, depending how you count the testimony about the September check, 4 or 5 successful compliance checks since the violation of 12/14/16.
Yeah, we've been consistently checked. Yeah. So.
Commissioner, do you have any other questions of either of the witnesses?
No, is there another witness as a caller waiting, or is that a different case?
No, our audio wasn't working through the video chat, so this is our phone.
No, I just see someone else on the screen. I'm guessing that's
I think
for another.
that's for the next case. The young lady, I think, is for the next case. Am I correct, Miss?
Yes.
I have no further questions, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Mulvaney, you have any further questions?
No, sir.
Hearing no further questions, testimony as completed in this case. Mr. Bajo, would you like to make any further comments, closing comments?
Yes, sir. The only thing I'd like to say is, once again, I'd like to reiterate what we mentioned earlier, that our policy has changed, and basically it is carding anyone who looks below 35, 40. Of course, that's hard to sometimes discern and tell who's 35 and 40. So we're erring on the side of caution. Other than that, as you can see from our previous history, just even the month before when we were done, we were checked, that we did pass. So it's not that we're blatant disregard of we're not even checking or anything, which is absolutely not our intent. We're definitely taking steps, and at the same time, we're responsible with this. It's not something that we're looking to basically hand, alcohol out to young people or anything of that sort. Absolutely not. Also, our consistent over the last 5 years, I have the records right here. We've been checked by the ATF and state police for the cigarettes, and we've passed every time. So it's not that we haven't been checked either, and we are consistent with that approach. But mistakes do get made, and we definitely made one. So we're correcting it and moving on from there.
Inspectors, do you have any closing comments you would like to make, either Inspector Carey or Inspector Benfer?
No, sir.
Hearing none, testimony is closed, and we will now, as a Board of License Commissioners, discuss the merits of this case and hopefully render a decision. Commissioners, you've heard the testimony. Comments, please.
Mr. Chairman, I have a few comments. I think it's a good thing that this licensee has all of his employees TAM certified. That's a good step from our perspective. And I'm also, frankly, I'm a little bit sympathetic to Mr. Lindsay's conundrum with regard to the apparent age of the tester. As I looked at the file, the tester does have a receding hairline. And frankly, just from the photographs I saw, I can understand, although I don't call it acceptable, but I can understand how a server might think that he is above 30. Still, as has been mentioned, it is preferable from our perspective to always err on the side of caution. And in this case, that didn't happen. And again, I think it's good the changes that were made, which sounds like the change that was made is that instead of a general policy of carding people who look over the age of 30, that the carding will take place unless they appear to be at the age of 35. I would mention that in this particular case, I guess one could argue that this tester, this volunteer, could have looked 35 to some people. So I think that the better policy, as Mr. Bahaj said, is to increase carding of customers, understand his concern about customers being agitated about certain things, vertical licenses and such, and perhaps carding when you're a certain age. But I think our licensees are, at least in my opinion, under an obligation to do the best they can to ensure that underage sales don't occur. And sometimes that evokes anger from customers, but so be it. I do note that there were 3 violations in 5 years. I think that's in evidence, not contradicted. I'm a little surprised at the fine for the second violation. $1,000. I don't recall that case. I'm not sure why that fine was assessed, but I would note, Mr. Chairman, that while we're not bound by any type of formula, that for some reason at that time the board felt that a fine of $1,000 was appropriate for a second violation. Those are my comments, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Mulvaney?
I agree with Mr. Barnhart that although it does agitate people, a better policy would be to card everyone. I know that makes people uncomfortable sometimes if to have to provide ID if they know they're over 21, but you know, to err on caution and to protect your business, I think that would be a wiser policy to make. And as Commissioner Barnhart said, I'm not sure about the $1,000 fine. It was before my time, so I'm not sure why that was assessed so high and possibly be taken into consideration with this being the third violation in 5 years. So if it's okay with the Mr. Chairman, I'm proposed to make a motion.
Let me make one comment before you make that motion, since I was a member of the commission at the time that fine was assessed. I don't have 2017's files with me. I only go back to 2019. But my recollection was the testimony that was given for that and the intent of the commissioners at that time was that that second fine was issued less than a year from the first fine, which was issued very shortly after the ownership changed. And while I can appreciate the comments that were made about just taking over the business, it would appear to me as a citizen that if I were taking over a business involving alcohol, that I would be extremely careful for the first year, in addition to being careful for the rest of the time. And with that said, I think that was the reasoning that the fine was $1,000 for the second violation within 11 months. Now, if you would like to make a motion, the chair would entertain it.
Thank you very much for your insight on that, on those two fines, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. So based on all the evidence involved in case number 6273, I find you culpable. And since this is a third fine within 5 years, I propose to impose a fine of $1,200.
Is there a second to the motion?
I second the motion, Mr. Chairman.
Motion has been properly made and seconded that we find the licensee culpable and assess a fine of $1,200. Is there any further discussion on the motion?
No, sir.
Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. So ordered. Mr. Baja, we find you culpable, and this commission issues a fine of $1,200, which may be paid within 30 days of official notice of the action of this commission, of which you will receive written notice of the decision. Do you have any questions?
No, sir.
Hearing none, thank you very much. Best wishes for a continued successful business.
All righty. Thank you all.
At this time, I would ask our attorney, Mr. Dixon, if he will call our case number 6274, please.
All right, case 6274, Class D, beer only license issued to Sandra McKelvin for the use of 1623 Brewing Company LLC, trading as 1623 Brewing Company, 5975 Exchange Drive, Suites H through L, Eldersburg, Maryland, 21784, violation hearing sale to a minor. In the file of this matter, we have the following documents. A, delivery of notice of hearing, acknowledged receipt of letter dated October 8th, 2020, delivered by hand on October 8th, 2020. Received by Carrie Nevin. There's an October 8th, 2020 letter from Joe Vance to Sandra McKelvin. There is a photograph of the volunteer outside of the establishment with a 6-pack of beer or alcohol. There's a photograph of the volunteer's Maryland vertical driver's license that indicates the person is under 21 until 7/31/2021. There is a alcohol compliance violation sheet completed and signed on October 7th, 2020 by Inspector Charles Carey. There's also a notice of violation for selling alcohol to persons under 21 on the letterhead of Brian L. D. Leonardo, State's Attorney. And it was signed and completed by Jacob Halstead. I would ask that the file be entered into evidence.
We'll accept that into evidence. At this time, I would ask all those who intend to testify in this case, please stand, raise your right hand, and be sworn in by Ms. Vance.
And raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Yes, I do.
I do.
Thank you very much. Inspector Carey, will you or Inspector Benfer?
Yes, sir. I'll be taking care of that.
You may go ahead and proceed, please.
Thank you, sir. Liquor Board Inspector Charles Carey, on 7 October 2020 at 16:35 hours, I sent an underage volunteer who is 20 years old into the 1623 Brewing Company to purchase alcohol. The bartender handed him a 6-pack of 1623 Brewing Company beer. The bartender did not ask our volunteer for any form of ID and sold him the alcohol. The bartender was Jacob Halstead, who is TIPS certified. I spoke to the bartender, Mr. Halstead, who stated he did not ask our volunteer for any ID. All paper was completed and signed. Also, this was our first compliance check for this facility, 1623 Brewing Company. Also, I request that both photos in this case be entered into evidence. That's our case.
We'll accept them into evidence. Does that conclude your case at this time?
Yes, sir. That concludes our case.
Ms. McKelvin, would you like to tell us what happened?
I was not here that day, but it was my understanding that a minor walked up to the bar, asked for a 6-pack of beer, and Jake, who was the bartender at the time, did not ask for any form of ID. Our rules from day one have been every single person gets carded, because it's really not up to us to decide how old someone is. At the time, Jake just made a bad decision to go ahead and give that person the 6-pack of beer. Since then, we have, we've consistently been on our employees, even from opening day one, of always carding all customers. But since then, we obviously have really reiterated that rule. We have monthly meetings that we are constantly on employees. I do think, unfortunately, in light of this, it's brought, spotlight to all of our employees, including Jake, who obviously knows he's fully responsible for not carding this particular customer.
Ms. McKelvin, State your name and address for the record, please, and I apologize for not asking you before you begin your testimony.
Sandra Lynn McKelvin, 1146 Colonel Joshua Court, Westminster, Maryland, 21157.
Thank you. I didn't mean, I apologize for interrupting you, but we need that for the record.
No problem.
And if I remember what you said, and I might be a little bit confused here now, it's your policy to card everyone over a certain age, or what?
No,
what did you say?
We have always instated that every person gets carded. I mean, we've had people mad at us for carding them because of their age, but you know, especially when it gets to a point of someone being 30, maybe looking younger or young, you know, so forth, it's hard to really gauge how old a person is. So therefore, we've always made it that every person gets carded. Now, obviously, as we've been open and some of our quote regulars have come in and we know their age, we're not going to constantly card them. But anyone that's new to our establishment that we don't know, our rule is to card that person.
So in effect, vertical license, you do not accept?
We do not. I know recently that's been a challenge because we've had people come in with vertical IDs and they can't get their license renewed because of the pandemic. We have asked in some cases for other forms of ID, but we do not accept vertical IDs.
Okay. Commissioners, do you have any questions of Ms. McKelvin?
Oh, well, I have a few, Ms. McKelvin. Do you know what day of the week that this violation occurred on?
It was a Wednesday?
Wednesday? Was that a busy day for you?
Not really. No.
So back in October of 2020, what were your operating hours? Just generally.
Well, on a Wednesday, it would be from 2 to 10.
Okay. And when was opening day?
February 22nd.
Yeah, I think that's right, because I think I drove by opening day to see how you were doing. This was just before the shutdown.
3 weeks.
And I recall you were doing a lot of business that day.
Yes, we were.
I was coming from Pasta, who had nobody there. So I have seen your operation. I have toured your facility. You've made an enormous investment. Can you give the board an idea of the business that you have, the investment that you made, and then how is business going at this time?
Overall, I'd say our investment has been about $1.5 million. That includes both our tap room and our brew house. Our current business, there's without question, these last 11 months, 10 months now have, if I'm being honest, been complete hell. You know, first of all, us just trying to figure out the business, not knowing, being new to it, and then to have the pandemic hit and shut everything down and just learning, you know, everything that needs to be done, trying to ensure, most importantly, the safety of both our employees and our customers has been the first and foremost thing on our list. And it's been hard. We've spent even more money taking preventive measures. Like every other week, we have this place completely cleaned as if we had COVID, which obviously is pretty costly, but we feel that it's, you know, something we need to do to ensure, again, the safety of both our employees and our customers. So business, you know, although it's been tough, I feel like we've been doing a good job of holding our own and trying to stay afloat and keeping our employees employed. That was one of the biggest things my husband and I from the beginning, our goal was to try to keep our employees employed. So since all of this has gone on, the one thing that has been a positive is our distribution side has really taken off. So we have, we're looking actually into expanding our, the amount of suites that we have to actually bring in additional brewing equipment so that we can make more beer and get it out in distribution. So
Yeah,
that's
that was
positive.
that was going to be my next question about how that side of the business is going. I have heard that it's doing well. That is, some stores are trying to stock your product and can't always get it because of availability, because you are doing well on that side.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, correct.
And how many employees do you have, Ms. McKelvin?
I believe now we're up to 27. And that includes both the tap room, what we call the front of the house, and the back of the house.
Okay, so let's just stick to how many of your employees actually serve patrons and customers?
Wow, I don't know that specific number because we do have, we have our bartenders, but then we have servers, and then we have bussers. Some of our bussers who aren't 18 obviously can't serve the beer.
Right.
But if I'm guessing, I'm going to say 20.
Okay. And how many of them are TIPS or TAM certified?
They all are. Even the new ones, we actually have hired people during this. And we even early on made it a point to get them TIP certified as quickly as we could because we feel it's very important.
Yeah, that's very commendable. That's a lot of employees who hopefully have received the training they need to help guard against underage sales and over sales, for instance.
Yes. Right.
And during the last year, during the shutdown, there have been times where you haven't been allowed to have anybody inside the facility. You've been out in the parking lot.
Correct.
It goes back and forth, right? Sometimes you're open.
No, it didn't go back and forth. So the shutdown happened on lovely St. Patrick's Day, and we were shut down, I believe, until about mid-June. And mid-June, we were allowed to open inside at, I think it was 25% capacity. And then at one point we moved to 50%. And then when they moved it to 75%, we made a decision that based on our layout and how our customers felt, like they felt very safe here, that it wasn't in our best interest to go to the 75%. So we always stayed at 50.
Okay, what is it now? Do you have indoor service now?
Yes, and it's 50% still.
And your present operating hours, Ms. McKelvin, what are they?
So Wednesday and Thursday, we're open from 2 to 9. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, we open 11:30 to 9. And then we just started something last night where we did a Taco Tuesday, bringing in a taco food truck that we're open from 3 to 8. Our plan is to do that this month and next month just to get a gauge to see if, possibly we could pull in some added business on a Tuesday.
Okay. Thank you, man. That's all the questions I have, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Mulwini?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. McKelvin, first off, I'd like to commend you for the Card Everyone policy. I think it just makes sense. Unfortunately, this one kind of fell through the cracks. Do you have anything in place as kind of a checkpoint kind of thing to say, how you would know if that's happening?
The only thing I can say is daily, my general manager, Carrie, she works with all the employees every day to reiterate the fact, I guess, two things is one, carding everyone, but also, we really try to monitor the amount of alcohol too that every person gets. So that is two things that I think she is always on our employees about. I know on the daily schedule, she puts on there what the actual birth date is, for anyone who's turning 21 today. She has the signs posted at the bar, as well, that we don't card anyone under 21 and we don't accept vertical IDs. So aside from that, I can't say there's any given check other than she does monitor, obviously, our servers and bartenders as they're interacting with customers to make sure that they are carding people that are, asking for beer.
Do you have an incentive program in place if a compliance check is passed? Some businesses do. Some businesses will have an incentive program that says, okay, you passed the compliance, you dodged the bullet, here's this kind of
Right.
thing.
Well, this last, after, unfortunately, this circumstance, my husband had, I think he kind of laughingly, but meant it throughout, if someone else comes in and, everything goes okay with the liquor board, they get $100. And on New Year's Eve, it happened. You all sent someone in, and the person who, it was not Jake, it was someone else, and she did her due diligence and made sure that they were carded, and she questioned them. So that, I don't know that that's going to be an ongoing thing for us, to be honest with you. That's not something we've really discussed, but she did get her $100 though, and she was very happy.
And we'll probably continue to card everybody again. So
Well, yes, and as will all of our employees, because as I said in the beginning, like, this definitely has brought light to the fact that you can't underestimate anyone walking through the door, especially with the masks on. I mean, and although we can tell them to pull the mask down, it's so fast, and everyone needs to be carded. There's no excuse for it. And Jake knows how I feel about it, because I'm treating him like my son, and have reprimanded him several times now. But I mean, it's an unfortunate circumstance.
I can appreciate that fact, and I absolutely applaud you on your diligence to make sure that your business is run professionally.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. McKelvin,
I
I
have
would,
several questions.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Well,
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just comment to Ms. McKelvin that I think it's a good idea to institute that incentive program. I've seen licensees who have come in before us and said, this actually works. This has started working. So laughingly, perhaps it was brought up, but it's a good idea. It works. Good, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
I have several questions, but would that gentleman, is he intend to testify?
He's available if you choose for him to ask him any questions. I mean, he, from the beginning, said to me, he said, I want to be involved in this because I'm the one that made the mistake and screwed up, so I feel like I should be involved.
I would like to ask him if he would state his name and address for the record, please.
Jacob Michael Halstead, 7407 Village Drive, apartment 25, Sykesville, Maryland, 21784.
I assume you have been employed since the opening
Yes,
of the
sir,
establishment?
That is correct.
You have previous experience with alcohol in some other manner?
No, sir, this is my first alcohol-related job.
And you are tips?
Yes, sir.
Tips or TAM?
Tips.
And what is your main occupation at the 1623?
I am a beer tender, sir.
So you're not involved with the wholesale operation of the product?
No, sir. Nope, just everything on the front of the house.
And you were the server of the cadet, is that right?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Was I don't have a picture of it, so I can't tell. Was it a male or female?
It was a male, sir.
Male. Thank you, Ms. McKelvin.
Yes.
You monitor, just in my question here, you monitor all of the servers and so on and so forth to be sure that they ask for IDs and so on and so forth.
Yes.
What about serving of beverages? I don't know how quite to put this without being a little bit, well, let's put it this way. What would you say the average time that a patron spends inside at the bar, the tables? And I apologize, I have been past your establishment, but have not had the opportunity to actually come inside the building. What would you say would be do they stay for a half hour or hour? Or?
I'd say between an hour, hour and a half, maybe.
And you have food available either in-house or by food trucks?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
And you may have an idea, I'm sure you have a wild idea, if not a more concrete one. With the unusual situation that we have now, and as you mentioned, you could use some more ability to produce product. What would you say your wholesale sales versus retail in the establishment would be?
You know, in a perfect non-pandemic world, what it should be is 65% in the tap room and 35% for the distribution wholesale side. And I would say that's completely flipped around now. We're now probably more 35% in the tap room and 65 on the wholesale side.
And I believe you indicated earlier that you were trying to expand the product side to produce more product because if circumstances were normal, that you could sell more than what you are now.
Yes, so we're looking at taking over the suites alongside of us that are vacant so that we can actually put some more tanks and, you know, brew house equipment in there. So that way, as we make our beer, we have tanks to ferment them in, because that's our problem right now is with distribution and the tap room where we've been finding it tough just to keep up making the beer because we don't have enough tanks to put it in. So we're hoping by possibly April or May to get us to that point that we will take over those suites. And we're also looking at extending out our distribution. We really want to get into Pennsylvania, Virginia, and then start kind of going up and down the East Coast, you know, like ultimately our business plan, that's where it is. But I think this has pushed that model a little faster because of, you know, not being able to have as many people in the tap room.
How many can you accommodate at 50% in the tap room?
130 on the inside. Yes.
So if circumstances were normal, you could have 250 people or more in there, correct?
260.
Yeah, good. Commissioners, any other comments or questions?
I have a couple of quick questions. One for Mr. Halstead. At the time of this violation, were you aware that it's a crime to sell alcoholic beverages to a minor in Maryland?
Yes, sir, I was.
You were aware. And how did you become aware of that before this happened?
I mean, I have a few police officer friends, kind of stuff we would talk about. It's since been reiterated since the incident about the severity of it. So I've become well aware again of the severity at hand.
And Ms. McKelvin, you made all of your servers aware of the possible criminal repercussions for selling to a minor?
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, they all know from their tips training as well.
Yeah. But we have we have a program in Carroll County that's perhaps it's a year old, I guess, where we actually are involving the state's attorney's office when a server has served to a minor. That's fairly new for us. And I just want to see how many servers are aware of it when they come testify before us. And Mr. Hall said you were aware of it.
I can also tell you that I know in the Carroll County Times, when that article came out, that one of the laws changing was that the server was now going to be as responsible as the owner. We actually brought that article in for all the employees to read.
That was a good idea. Thank you. And I just want to say one thing, two things to you, Ms. McKelvin. First of all, you and your family have done a really wonderful job there with that facility. It's a real bonus to the community to have you there. And thank you for your work. Secondly, I would ask you to reinvigorate your policy that you card everyone. I was there recently to get a can of McKelvin Cypress for my son. I wanted him to try it because it's very good. And I walked in and I was not carded. I know I look what I look like,
Right.
but still, the policy is everyone.
Yes.
Clearly, that was a recent lapse. So I want to point it out to you. But again, you have a wonderful business going there, and I hope you have continued success.
Thank you. And I appreciate you letting me know that, because we really do try to instate to all of our employees that everyone gets carded.
Any other
So-
questions?
That's all I had, Mr. Commissioner, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Mulvaney, you have any other comments?
No, sir, thank you.
Testimony is now closed, and we will move into a summation part. Ms. McKelvin, do you have any further comments or general comments to make at this time?
I do not.
Inspectors, do you have any closing comments?
No, sir.
I'd like to make a comment that they were checked the first time they were checked, they failed the first check.
Would you identify yourself for the record, please?
Inspector Keith Benford.
And would you repeat what you just said?
They failed on their first check.
And how long had they been in business?
Probably about 6 months. But they were closed taproom was closed for several months during that time.
This concludes testimony, and now we will move into the discussion to discuss the merits of this case. Commissioners, your comments and thoughts?
Well, Mr. Chairman, that was going to be my one comment, or I can be one of a few comments. Mr. Benford just made it. They only have one violation, but it occurred on their first check. I guess for mitigation purposes, you can say on New Year's Eve, which may have been a busy night. They did pass their follow-up compliance check, but that's always good news from our perspective. But Mr. Benfer is right. First time tested, a failure. I'm convinced that Ms. McKelvin and staff know the severity that we hold any sales to underage customers, how we feel about that. And I feel that this licensee will make concerted efforts to prevent a second failure because, as we all know, compliance checks will be coming. Those are my comments, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Mawhinney?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Although it is true, it was their first check and a fail on their first check, I genuinely feel that this has really affected Ms. McKelvin, and her diligence moving forward will be focused on making sure this doesn't happen again.
Thank you, Commissioners. What was the exact date of this check? The date that it was made?
October 7th of last year.
October 7th was the date that it was checked. And when did they open for business?
February 22nd.
So this was roughly 8 months after they opened for business. Correct?
Yes.
And even though there was a period in there that was closed, as far as I'm concerned, the period of time that extended from the time the establishment was opened until the first check was made, in my opinion, does not carry the weight that if it had been made within 60 days of opening. While I understand the circumstances that was there, the establishment employs nearly 30 people, first-class operation, and I applaud everything that about the operation as it exists and has existed. I think the licensee has been very diligent about not selling to minors, and the steps that they have taken can easily, somebody can make a mistake pretty quick. So with those comments, Commissioners, what are your feelings as far as the violation that occurred that you have heard witnesses' testimony?
Mr. Chairman, I completely agree with the comments you just made, especially in light of the testimony we heard today about how this licensee is going to go forward. I have toured the facility. It is a wonderful facility, as I mentioned earlier. And I'm glad to hear that the wholesale side is picking up, because I know that on the retail side, when this shutdown first began, they were doing tremendous business, and all of a sudden it was knocked out from under them. And I think that that this licensee and its operation has taken a hard financial hit. I'm glad that they're surviving and doing well. As you know, Mr. Chairman, as you know, my feeling, and I'm sure it's the feeling of the rest of the commissioners, that public safety is our number one concern, our utmost concern. Selling to minors is a large part of that. Nevertheless, it's generally been our policy for a first offense to fine a licensee of $300. This is clearly a first offense, but we also have, I think, have a concern for small businesses in our community. And this has been a very hard year for a lot of our licensees. Not so much Class A. I think that liquor stores are doing okay, but restaurants and perhaps breweries and distilleries have been really hit hard by this. In this case, suspending the fine of $300 is not going to make or break this business. However, it's my feeling that in light of everything that's been said and up to this point, I'm prepared to offer a motion, Mr. Chairman. The motion would be that we find the licensee culpable for sales to a minor in case 6274, assess a fine of $300 and suspend $300 conditioned upon 12 months of no violations being recorded from the date of this hearing. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's my motion.
Motion has been properly made and properly made that this commission find the licensee culpable and issue a fine of $300 with the stipulation that the fine be suspended if there are no further violations in 12 months. Is there a second to the motion?
I second that motion.
Motion's been properly made and seconded that we find the licensee culpable, issue a $300 fine, and suspend the fine if there are no further violations in the next 12 months. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, no. So ordered. Ms. McKelvin, we find you culpable, issue a $300 fine with the stipulation that the fine be suspended if there are no further violations in the next 12 months. Do you have any questions?
I don't. Thank you, and I appreciate everything.
Congratulations on a fine establishment. We hope not to have the unfortunate situation of you appearing before us again for this type of hearing. Continued success, and hopefully soon we'll be back to almost normal anyway, and you can continue to expand and further provide your product to those who desire. With that, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We are going to take a 8-minute recess and return and at 11:30. Okay, we're back in session. It looks like everyone is here. So at this time, I would ask Mr. Dixon if he would call case number 6278, please.
All right, case 6278, a Class B beer, wine, and liquor license issued to Francesco DeFada, Frank DeFada, and Robert DeFada for the use of Papa Sal, Inc., trading as Bellisimo's, 2900 Baltimore Boulevard, Finksburg, Maryland, 21048, violation hearing sale to a minor. In the file of this matter, we have the following documents. A delivery of notice of hearing, acknowledged receipt of a letter dated October 26, 2020, delivered by hand on 10/26/2020, received by Anna Cannon. There's a notice of intention to defend in the file with the box checked. I do not intend to contest the alleged violation. Signed October 26, 2020, and it looks like it's signed by Anna Cannon. There's October 26, 2020 letter from Joe Vance to Francesco DeFada, Frank DeFada, and Robert DeFada. And there is a alcohol compliance violation sheet dated October 22nd, 2020, and signed and completed by Inspector Charles Carey. There is a notice of violation for selling alcohol to persons under 21 with the letterhead of Brian L. DiLeonardo, State's Attorney. It was signed by Dawn Barnes. There's a photograph of the volunteer at a table with a bottle of Bud Light beer in front of him in his hand. And there's another photograph of the volunteer's Maryland vertical driver's license that shows the person is under 21 until July 31st, 2021. I would ask that the file be entered into evidence.
We'll accept that in evidence. At this time, I would ask all those who intend to testify, please stand, raise your right hand, and be sworn in by Ms. Vance. That includes all those who are on the line to testify.
Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
I do.
I do.
I do.
Before we would begin, I would ask all of those who intend to testify when called upon, first, please state your name and address for the record. Inspector Carey, are you going to present this case?
Yes, sir.
You may proceed, please.
Thank you. Good morning. On 22, let me start over again. It's going to be Charles Carey, Liquor Board Inspector for Carroll County. On 22 October of 2020, at 14:50 hours, I had an underage volunteer enter Bellisimo's restaurant to sit at the bar and order an alcoholic beverage. The volunteer was served a bottle of Bud Light beer. The server, Ms. Barnes, did not ask our volunteer, who is 20 years old, for any form of ID. I spoke to the server, Ms. Barnes, who advised me that she did not ask for any ID due to the fact he looked like a regular customer. Ms. Barnes is tip certified and all paperwork was completed and signed. Also, I request that both photos in this case be entered into evidence. That's our case.
We'll accept that into evidence. Miss Anna, who is going to testify first on your behalf, or what do you all have to say about the violation?
Anna Cannon, 1110 Moonbow Drive, Westminster, Maryland, 21157. I was going to ask Dawn to speak first because she was there during the incident. I was in the building, but she was, with the cadet, I guess you could say.
Okay,
do you
Ms.
want me to
Barnes, then?
speak? Yes, Dawn Barnes, 35 Hirsch Avenue, Westminster, Maryland, 21157. Yes, I was there, and I did make the mistake of serving someone without asking for ID, and I didn't ask him to take the mask off, which was probably the main cause of the problem there. It's a huge mistake. I don't know what else to say besides, yeah, I made a mistake. I've been tending bar in Carroll County for 28 years. I'll be a Bellissimo's 14 years next month, I believe. I've never served someone underage. It's not something that I take lightly. The Mothers Against Drunk Drivers thing I had to attend definitely hit home and was very emotional to watch and listen to people who had lost their loved ones due to a drunk driver. And something I could have contributed to by serving to someone underage.
I have oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Commissioner, do you have any questions of Ms. Barnes?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Barnes, what was the reason that you gave for not checking the ID of this volunteer?
I did think it was someone that actually had worked upstairs, and he was just there. Honestly, I really thought it was someone that I knew, and totally, no excuse. It's my fault. I served him. I didn't ask him to take the mask off. Since then, I've asked everyone to take their mask off. I've carded people now who are, last week I carded someone born in 1971, and the guy thought that was great. But yeah.
And you testified that in all your years of attending bar, you have never served, to your knowledge, an underage customer. Is that right?
Never. No. And I've been in Carroll County for 28 years, 10 years at the Resin, 5 at Stables, 14 at Bellissimo's.
Well, that's pretty remarkable record.
Thank you. It's a tough deal. And this mask thing is, I know it's not an excuse, but it does it adds a twist to it.
Yeah. How many times in the last year have you successfully refused to serve someone who you found out or thought was underage?
Maybe I've seen one other cadet in the last year.
Well, it doesn't have to be confined to cadets. It could be anybody off the street.
No one that I know of. No, I'm pretty good at carding people, and
Well, I guess my question is, ma'am, how many times have you asked for a card and they either didn't give it to you or they gave you one that you didn't like and you refused service?
I can't recall any that, I haven't got any like vertical IDs that I had looked at or anything of the sort. No.
Is there a vertical ID policy at Bellissimo's?
Yes, there is.
And what is that?
We don't serve with you. If you have a vertical ID, we don't serve you.
Okay. And that's a known policy for all servers at Bellissimo's?
Yes, we have signage behind the bar, and I believe on the door as you come in, or somewhere outside there as you come in.
Okay. Are you TIPS or TAM certified?
Yes, I am.
Are any other servers at Bellissimo's TIPS or TAM certified?
I'm pretty sure we all are, yes.
Okay. All right. Is there a written policy that the servers have to review for Bellissimo's that states vertical IDs are not accepted?
Yeah, I think we have read that.
Okay. And you believe that there's signage about vertical IDs?
Yeah,
either at the...
I know there is, yes.
Yeah, we have it displayed in probably 6 or 7 places in the building.
Okay. And I think it was mentioned, I may have missed it. What is the policy now about carding patrons?
I card pretty much everyone now I did before, but now my guard is up even higher. And basically, if I don't know you, I card you. Like I said, I carded 2 guys last week. They were both almost 50.
Yeah. And how about, does Bellissimo's have a policy in that regard? Do you know?
Just pretty much anyone that looks under 40 or that's not a regular of ours, we card.
So you think that's the policy for the restaurant, under 40?
I would say.
Okay.
I'm going to go with the gray hair policy, but we know that doesn't always work because of hair dye. So that is our, general consensus, because we do have a large percentage of our business as regular customers. So we do see a lot of the same folks over and over and over again. And so, once you become so familiarized, some of them almost on a daily basis. So because of that, we don't, if we don't recognize someone, we card them. If we have any inkling, we card them. In the carry out, people come for packaged goods, we card everyone. But in the bars, it is a little bit different because, like I said, I'd say 85% are regular customers.
Okay. And that is, ma'am, was that Anna Cannon who was just speaking?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Ms. Cannon, what is your role at Bellissimo's?
I am one of the owners and day-to-day manager.
Okay. And would you agree that most of your servers are TIPS or TAM certified, if not all?
All.
Oh, good.
Mm-hmm.
No, thank you. Those are the only questions I have right now.
Okay.
Mr.
Commissioner Mulvaney?
I'm sorry. So, Ms. Barnes, you had testified that you didn't card him because he looked like a regular customer, but then in the same aspect saying that you don't card people if you recognize them. And unfortunately, like you said, with the mask situation now, sometimes it's hard to recognize people. As you already have stated, you thought you knew him from being a regular. Have you changed the way you view that now? Do you now card more people, even if you think you recognize them?
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah. I've just in the last week, like I said, I've carded people that are over 50 years old, and I'll just ask you to take your mask off just so I can, make sure you're as old as, I'm assuming you are.
Thank you.
Well, and if I could speak regarding that, the other part of that was that we had someone in the building. His name is Chuck Stewart. I have a picture I can send to Keith. I'm pretty sure I shared it with him that day when, we filled out the paperwork, and he was there that day for lunch. And honestly, when he showed me the picture, I said, wait a minute, that's Chuck. He's 41. And come to find out it wasn't Chuck, but it certainly resembled him. And Dawn, if I recall, you felt the same way.
Yeah, I did. That's who I thought it was because I had just seen him upstairs.
Ms. Barnes, were you aware at the time, back in October, that serving an underage person alcohol is a crime in Maryland?
Yes.
And how did you know that?
I've been behind the bar for 28 years. I've been certified several times, and yes, I'm well aware.
Okay. And I'm guessing from your testimony and from look at the file that you participated in a program that's set up through the State's Attorney's Office in Carroll County?
Yes, I did. And that had an impact also on me. As I said, there was 2 girls in one of those stories. They were both cheerleaders. They were sisters. Both my girls were cheerleaders. The one got killed. And by the time I was done with that, I could have said a lot more positive things on the end where they asked questions, but I was just emotionally spent. That definitely took a toll on me. I've talked to other bartenders about that. This is not something that I take lightly, and I've made a huge mistake, and I'm very sorry.
I appreciate that. Everything you said there, Ms. Barnes. Ms. Cannon, do you recall the last time that a underage sale violation occurred for Bellissimos?
The last time there was an underage sale would have been with, to my knowledge, would have been with Lori Van Zant. That the timeline, within the last few years, I can say it was more than one, maybe less than three. I'm not exactly sure. I want to say maybe 2 years.
Yeah, I think you're pretty close. According to our records, it looks like there was an underage sale August 22nd, 2019. And then a month later, you did pass, or not you, the Bellissimos passed a compliance check. And now we have this one of October 22nd, which I think you're right, is maybe 14 months, somewhere around there, two violations in 14 months. That's what our wave chart indicates. And I guess if that's not right, Mr. Benford can correct me.
It's correct. We have another one on 2/19/2015 also.
Yeah, and thank you, Mr. Carey. And that is more than 5 years ago. And so this board tends to focus on the last five years. But you make a good point. So back in 2015, there was a violation. And since then, there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 consecutive successful compliance checks according to our wave chart. And then we had these 2 violations within 14 months.
Yes, sir. And if I could add, we are checked for tobacco regularly also and are 100% compliant with tobacco.
Okay. So here's a question for you. I guess that was Ms. Cannon?
Yes, sir.
Okay. This is not the first time that this board has heard a licensee come in and indicate that they're 100% compliant with alcohol compliance checks, but they can't say the same for tobacco compliance checks, but they can't say the same for alcohol compliance checks. So we've heard this before, so I was wondering if you might have an explanation for that you can give the board.
I could use an answer.
I would say that we certainly serve much more, we serve the patrons purchasing alcohol and more repeatedly, where if someone comes in and buys cigarettes, they buy them once. When you're drinking throughout a period of time, or there's more liquor sales.
Okay, and that makes sense. I think in the past, what this board has heard is that with regard to tobacco sales, some licensees have an incentive program that if you pass a successful compliance check for a tobacco sale, you are rewarded in some financial fashion. Does Bellissimos have that with regard to successful compliance checks for alcohol sales?
We do not, and that is mainly because we expect them to card everyone, and there are many times, there have been 2 in the past week that I know of personally where people have came in underage to be served. So, you know what I'm saying? Like that isn't something we could sustain, because if you're, if you're basing it on the fact that someone's underage, that happens often enough that's what they should always be doing. And you know what I'm saying? If you're basing it on every time someone comes underage, where does that end?
Yeah, I take your point. That's a good point.
When you're a cadet, it should always be the case.
Okay. I have no further questions at the moment, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Mulvaney?
I just wanted to Ms. Cannon, I seem to recall from your August 22nd violation, hearing looks like it was on October 9th. Following that violation, you then became certified to give TIPS and TAM classes. Am I correct in that recollection?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and so you, like all of your employees, you're able to TIPS and TAM certify them?
Yes.
Great, thank you so much.
You're welcome. And for the record, I also do offer that to other people in the county virtually because obviously under the current circumstances, it's important, and that is an assault service that's available. So that is something that I offer virtually to everyone that contacts me, that needs it.
One quick question, Ms. Cannon. It looks like in my notes that from the last violation hearing of violation was August 28th, 2019, a $300 fine was assessed and $300 was suspended. Does that ring a bell? Does that sound right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Cannon, if I remember the testimony at the last hearing, when you expressed the desire to become certified to teach TIPS or TAM classes, whatever the case might be, is that correct?
Yes, sir. It's through the Restaurant Association of Maryland.
Other than your own employees, have you taught any other classes?
Yes, sir.
Approximately how many?
Probably about 20 or so.
20 more other classes?
Yes, sir.
And where would they have been?
They're virtual. Online.
And where would the students come from? Local?
Yes, various establishments in the county. So it wouldn't be 20 different establishments, but 20 different people.
What's the capacity of your establishment? I haven't been in there for a while. There used to be a bar upstairs and a bar downstairs. Is that currently correct?
Yes, sir. Yes. Currently during COVID is 180. It was, it's 360 for the building, 180 standing, and 90 seated. Actually, am I saying that right?
Now it is.
Right.
Originally it was 180 seated.
But yes, I'm sorry. I'm tripping up on my
180 seated. And standing, we could go up to the code of the fire marshal, which is like 425.
Hold on, you have to identify yourself.
I did identify before.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Did I answer the question?
Yes, sir. Yes, you did. It's always
Thank you.
It's always nice to have Dad in here to take care of his offspring. It lends a credence to the testimony that they give. Somebody's watching over them.
I just want to tell you, I'm sorry if I get emotional. Give me a second. I just want to tell you and your board, I'm very thankful to be in America, at least for this week. I don't know about next week. Okay? Up to this week. I came to America in 1966, and I was telling this story to some of my friends. My parents lived as a married couple in Sicily for 30 years. And they could never buy a house. They came to America. My father came first with a couple of my brothers and sisters. And within 6 months, he bought a house. Can you believe this? Now, the same people that couldn't do it over there, they did it over here. Within 6 months, and we all contribute to pay the house off, and the house was paid off in 2 years. You can only do that in America. I'm sorry if I'm getting off the subject. I just want to be grateful. Now, I just want to thank everybody for the opportunity. You all have a good day. I'll pass it to my daughter.
Mr. DeFada, I have a question for you. It's always been interesting to hear your comments, as you just mentioned, about immigrating here to the United States of America. I think the last time that we had the privilege of talking with you, you told us how many restaurants or businesses that you had.
Yes.
Could you tell us how many that you do still currently have?
Yes, sir. We have currently altogether 4. We did close about 3-4 months ago the restaurant in carry out, I should say, in Liberty Road, and the reason is the rent got astronomical. We were paying like $1,500 a month. It just didn't make any financial sense to stay open. However, just as a blessing, we got a call from the Westminster Mall, Town Hall, and we rent that place. The previous owner was paying like $7,000-8,000 a month with the cam and all that. Guess how much we pay? $1,000. They give us a deal. Of course, we had to fight for it. We got the rent at the Westminster Mall, and we call it Vinny because the people that work there for us, they have a 25% partnership.
Which are also immigrants.
Yeah, they used to work there for 30 years under Villa. So now we closed one of the business, but we opened one that it's much better and much cheaper with the rent. It's hard to believe we're paying $1,000 a month, and that's a 15-year lease, 5 and 5. So I am grateful for that. And it's doing very well.
Good, congratulations. Any other questions of Ms. Barnes or Ms. Cannon?
No, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Hearing none, testimony is now closed, and if Ms. Cannon or Ms. Barnes would like to make any closing comments, or either of the two of you, we would be glad to hear them at this time.
Sir, if I could speak, this is Anna Cannon. You know, I want you to understand this is certainly not something that we take lightly whatsoever. We work under, all these different guidelines, that are going on right now, how things have changed. And we do try to continue to adapt and improve and come up with different ways to address problems as they arise. And the nice thing about our staff is we work together collectively to make these decisions that are ways to help the staff work cohesively to not have these type of obstacles. And, that is what we will continue to do. This is not something, like I said, that it's devastating when this happens because we don't like to fail. And we honestly feel like we failed in this circumstance. And I know Dawn takes it seriously. She takes her record and her reputation seriously. And we made a mistake. We were 100% accountable for that mistake. And my plan moving forward is for us to alter, our regulars policy. And really, honestly, we just got to have them all, even the regulars, they're going to laugh, but we're going to have them walk in with that ID every day, because I just feel like, this is not a risk that we're willing to take. We certainly don't want to see anybody get served underage. It's very dangerous. When they're younger, they are a little more careless with their actions, and that's not something that we want to see happen.
Thank you. Inspectors, do you have any closing comments?
Other than they were rechecked yesterday, and our volunteer was asked for ID. They passed.
Good. Testimony is now closed, and we will now discuss the merits of the case. Commissioners, you have heard testimony in regards to this case. Your comments and suggestions?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I have a couple of comments. It's already been stated, I think, but it's obvious that we've had 2 violations in 14-month period. That's on one side of the ledger. On the other side, there are 8 consecutive successful checks before these 2 quick violations. So it seems to me that the rapid succession of violations is an anomaly. If you look at the last several years of record, 8 successful checks is a good thing from our perspective, or from my perspective, and I think from the board's perspective. I would also note that on the last hearing, the fine was suspended, and that is discretion that the board took as encouragement to the establishment to continue preventing underage sales. Unfortunately, Bellisimo's fell a little short in that regard. So I think the fact that the fine was suspended is something that last time around is something that should be taken into account or into consideration this time around for the second violation in 14 months. I guess my last comment was I'm still, having heard the testimony of Ms. Cannon, Mr. DeFada, and Ms. Barnes, I'm pretty confident that going forward, I think that Bellisimo's is going to step up, increase their vigilance a bit more, and I'm hoping not to see them again for a long time in this capacity. Thank you.
Commissioner Mulvaney, do you have any comments or motions?
If you have no comments, Commissioner Browning, I would be prepared to make a motion.
We would be glad to hear it.
I do genuinely feel that Ms. Barnes and Ms. Cannon feel, adamant that this was a mistake based on the COVID situations that we continually hear at these hearings. And it's very unfortunate that that's what happens. However, this wasn't a sale to a minor within 14 months of a previous sale to a minor. I feel that there are consequences to that action. I would motion to find Bellissimo's culpable in case of 6278 and assess a fine of $600 for the second violation within the past 5 years.
Is there a second to the motion?
I will second that motion with the comment that if the fine had been raised because of the previous suspension, I would have agreed with that, but I agree with Commissioner Mulvaney that this is an appropriate fine in this case.
Motion has been properly made and seconded that we find the licensee culpable and issue a fine of $600. This being the second violation within 14 months. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, no. So ordered. Ms. Cannon, we find you culpable and assess a $600 fine, of which must be paid within 30 days of official receipt, which will be a written notice of the action of this commission at this hearing today. Do you have any questions?
No, sir.
Hearing none. This concludes case 6278. If there are no other questions by the commissioners or inspectors or staff, We will stand adjourned until 1:30.